And our topic today is MarcEdit, and I am a complete MarcEdit newbie. I have only been using MarcEdit for a very short time. So what I'm thinking of doing this morning is just showing you a few things that I've discovered with MarcEdit and a few ways that myself and my volunteer catalogers have started using it. And anybody, please chime in with questions, your tips and tricks. MarcEdit is an amazing program with such powerful capabilities that I imagine this will be only the first of many explorations we do. So I see a lot of people are still joining us and coming in, so I'm going to repeat a little bit. Welcome. Um, as I was saying, I'm a complete MarcEdit newbie, and I thought that this morning I would just share a few things that I've discovered with MarcEdit and the way my volunteer catalogers and I have begun using it. I would really appreciate anybody chiming in at any time with other tips and tricks, and we'll see what we find out and see what we discover. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, I hope folks can see that.
Yep, looks good.
Great, thank you. So what I've started here, I can get it in the foreground. Oh, there we go, is a document with my notes. And I'm envisioning putting this somewhere so it could be useful to everyone. I'm sort of thinking somewhere probably on the Koha wiki. Perhaps we have this area here of training resources with cataloging. But please chime in about where it would be useful as we get into things. So the first thing that we did, oh, I'm not seeing the chat. Bear with me a little bit. Let me see if I can get the chat back up here. Well, I'll check the chat later. The first thing that we profiled was OCLC as a koha target. And we are an OCLC library. I know that not all koha libraries by a long shot use OCLC, but the first step in our cataloging workflow was getting our koha installation, getting records in from other places to do as much copy cataloging as possible. So the koha manual was actually really, really helpful here for profiling koha as an OCLC target. And I did a screenshot here of what it looked like, but I'm not sure y'all can see that really well. But it's really a simple process to even put in OCLC as a koha, as a Z3950 target. Then the next step was to install MarcEdit. And although I use Connection Client from OCLC for a lot of cataloging, it doesn't really work well on non-Windows systems. So my volunteer librarians who are doing cataloging for me, they have Mac laptops. So we were interested in exploring MarcEdit for that reason, for an interface for cataloging. The koha manual has a very helpful section that's a little bit out of date, but it's still easy to figure out. And at the MarcEdit website, there are really helpful instructions. as well as Terry Reese's YouTube channel. And he recently has been doing some more YouTube videos, and he just did a new one on installing MarcEdit on a Mac. So if you have a Mac, that's probably really, really helpful. I have to confess, I haven't watched his latest YouTube videos yet, but I'm absolutely going to. So if you are an OCLC library, configuring MarcEdit to talk to OCLC is a little convoluted, but it can be done pretty simply. It's just a lot of steps. There's a really helpful guide on the MarcEdit website. You have to ask OCLC to give you World Share Record Manager if you don't have it. And there wasn't an additional charge for this for us at all. We just simply asked for it and we're added to it. And I've never even used it. It's just a capability that you apparently have to have. Then you request OCLC developer keys at this website. Now, I know I'm going through this a little fast, but we can look at things in detail if people want and totally review it. This site at the OCLC website has a really, really helpful walkthrough on how to do it. And then once your keys have been approved by OCLC and you have access to them, you're going to get an email with the somewhat cryptic subject heading that says your WS key request has been approved. And then all your information is in this email. You follow the instructions to log into this site, select manage your API keys, and then you can highlight and copy your keys and paste them into MarcEdit. And there's really helpful instructions with Terry Reese's YouTube video on called MarcEdit OCLC Metadata API Integration, Saving and Validating Your Keys. So we'll take a look at where this lives. And then here's some more helpful resources that we'll come back to. So let's take a look at MarcEdit. So the newer version of MarcEdit has you go to this little settings wheel, and it's in here that you'll configure the OCLC API integration, and this is where you're going to paste in your OCLC keys, your classification scheme, your institution codes, and a holdings code. There's also no place in here, although some of the documentation mentions it, to put in your OCLC authorization, your particular login and password. And for us, that's not a problem. We have the three volunteers can share an OCLC authorization. That works for us. That's something to keep in mind if you're going to do that at your institution. Also here, the ILS integration is where you're going to configure MarcEdit to talk to Koha. And it's really very simple. Pick Koha. We have profile default works. Your host name here, and that's where you're going to put in your particular username and password. So each cataloger then will put in their own Koha username and password here. So now I'll just do a little walkthrough of what it looks like when we're actually doing some copy cataloging. And I think this would look pretty much the same whether you're using a CLC or not. But again, please let me know. So I tend to use the cataloging button here, new for Z3950. And one thing I like about starting with Koha is I find when importing a record from Z3950, I get a little bit more information than if I do it from MarcEdit, and I'll show you that. So I'm going to pick OCLC bibs and Library of Congress, and I'm going to look for the annotated Hobbit. I'm intentionally looking for something by J.R.R. Tolkien because our library is a maritime history library, and I wanted to demonstrate something that clearly we would not have in our collection, and I told our reference librarian about this, so that if she sees anything popping up with Tolkien, she knows it's one of my tests that I'm playing with, and we know we're not actually really collecting the annotated Hobbit. So in this screen, I like it because it tells me the server. I get the title, the author, the date, the edition, the ISBN, the LCCN. There's a lot of information right on this screen. So it's pretty easy for me to look and say, hey, I think I've got, oh yeah, I think I've got the revised and expanded edition. And I can get a MARC preview and see what that record's like. See if that's the one I'm really interested in. And no, I'm not. This record's cataloged in German. And I can compare it with, oh, this one has an LCCN. Let me see a MARC preview on that. That is looking much more like the record I want. And I like that it's highlighted, so I know exactly where I was. And I can click that and go ahead and import it. At this point, my browser was set to the basic editor. At this point, I have to save my record. If I go from here into the advanced record editor, I'm going to lose the data. We're running 19.5. I don't know if that's a 19.5 thing or not. But if I hit save, it's going to give me a blank item, which at this point is fine. I'm just going to leave that as is. No items yet. There's my record I brought in. Let's do the same thing with MarcEdit. So if I go to MarcEditor, and search WorldCat, title annotated Hobbit, I'm getting many fewer choices to look at, or fields to look at. I have OCLC numbers and I have titles, but I don't have as much information about editions as I did in Koha. Now again, I'm a newbie. There's maybe a much better way to do this. So chime in and let us know if there is. So this is one reason why I've started the process with Koha rather than starting with MarcEdit. So back here, say I'm copy cataloging. I switch to our advanced editor. Make any changes I need to make. At this point, I am going to put in a big local note that says test record. No library. Just in case somebody sees this and goes, what? Record saved. If this were real and we really had it, I would go ahead and add an item record at this point. So after I've copy cataloged it, I've added my item record, barcoded, everything looks great. And then of course, I would want to update my holdings in OCLC or, excuse me. Of course, if I had been cataloging all day, I might have, I might have a whole batch of records, but I don't. I'm doing this in a very small way, and our volunteers are doing this in a very small way. So right now we're just doing them record by record. So what we would do at this point, go to MarcEdit, go to Koha, and search for my annotated Hobbit. I have different options that I can search by. I can also search by a record number, which I would do if I had a less distinctive title right now. There's my record. I want to download it. And here it is. MarcEdit, I like a lot. I really like the editing screen. It's very easy to work with. It doesn't have the color coding that Koha has, but it's extremely easy to scan. And at this point, setting my holdings in OCLC is really easy. I simply go to OCLC WorldCat, add delete update, or update holdings. I'm going to go ahead and do that so everyone can see it, and then delete the holdings after. So update your WorldCat holdings, add holdings, process. It's that easy. And of course now we want to delete those holdings because we do not really actually own this record. Interesting, I got an error. Huh. Well, I'm going to explore that later. Set this down to remind me to do it. So I'm going to stop my screen, or no, I'm going to go back to one more thing. Some more helpful resources. Terry Reese's YouTube channel is excellent. There's a MarcEdit 101 series that's really great. The listserv archives for the MarcEdit listserv are wonderful too. And the MarcEdit listserv is full of really helpful people. And Terry also seems to be on it 24 hours a day answering questions. And these are videos that I found very helpful, so I thought they'd be worth mentioning in detail. working with MarcEdit no CLC connection, MarcEdit working with local bibliographic records in WorldCat, MarcEdit direct ILS integration setup, Koha example, searching Koha example, and the update creation of records Koha example, because you can also work directly in your MarcEdit and then send the records into your Koha catalog. Stop my screen share right now, come back in, and I'm going to check the chat. And we have a question, will I share the Word document after the meeting? Absolutely, I'd be delighted to. I think one way for me to share that information more widely is rather than as a Word document, I'll put it in an email so that can go out. Can I demonstrate how to edit a record in MarcEdit and pass those edits to Koha? Sure, happy to. Let's do that. Share my screen. So let's go to the Marc editor and let's search for that record. Let's get a record out of Koha again. So let's do some edits. Let's say Bilbo Baggins, a respectable, well-to-do hobbit, lives comfortably in his hobbit hole to share an adventure, no return. On the way, they encounter elves, dragon, and many thrilling adventures. Let's add a subject heading. Now the indicators here are a little different. A blank is this slash, then a 0, and my spacing's off. The subfield delimiter is a $sign. Let's see, food, subfield fiction. I have no idea if these are real. Dragons, fiction.
Hey, Heather, do you need an A before food and an A before dragons?
Oh, thank you. Yes. You can tell I'm used to OCLC, where we don't have to type the A. And you can tell I need much more coffee this morning. And let's see, what other changes might we want to make? We might be putting in local titles. Something like that. There are various tools which are really helpful in MarcEdit. There is an RDA helper that I really like. You can have it add your different 3XX fields here. It could add relator fields. It can do many things like that, which since this is a very recent record, we don't need to do at this point. It also has a really good validator that I have to admit I haven't played with a lot. There we go, validate. Let's try it. No errors are reporting. Excellent. So now we want to send our changes back into Koha and overlay our record. The important field for that in our catalog is this 999. This has the Koha record number in it, and it's going to use that for the overlay. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be update create. Should item data be updated if present within the record? Ooh, let's try that. I'm going to say yes. I don't have item data, but let's do that next time. Let's go see what it looks like in Koha.
My experience, Heather, is that the item record update hasn't worked since we moved, since Koha moved from storing the MARC data in the biblio items table and moved it into the biblio metadata table.
Oh.
So I think MARC data is a little behind Koha in that respect. Okay.
So if I put in a 952 here, it's not going to work.
That's my experience. It could just be that I've got MarcEdit configured incorrectly, but I haven't figured out a way to correctly set it up. So it'd be interesting to see what happens right now.
Yeah, let's give it a try. I am going to cheat, and I am going to open my connection client and grab a default item record. And then that way y'all won't have to bear with me trying to remember my fields. Okay, let's get this edited into the right format. This is an item record for a menu that we just digitized and cataloged into our catalog and loaded onto the Internet Archive. Oops. I have to double check that subfield. There we go. Oh, Y object. There we go. This is Y. And this is O. The color. Let's see what happens. Yeah, the item didn't come through. Let's look at our Mark preview and see if there's any. Yeah. Did not come through. And let's do a title search and make sure we didn't get any duplicated records or anything. Yeah, so that's still happening. We'd have to add our item record back here in Koha. So let's see where we are with the chat. Mike is asking if I needed different Z3950 settings to be able to write the changes to Koha. We didn't. We're hosted and supported by Bywater, so that might be something in the Z3950 settings that might need some changes. Myka says she's only been able to search and download records, but hasn't been able to write the changes, create or update the records. If anyone else is having that problem and has any suggestions, that would be great to let Myka know.
Yeah, I would second following up with Bywater on that. There may be something in your settings that needs tweaked to allow it.
Yeah. Hi, George.
I just realized my video wasn't on, so.
Nice to see you. Well, that's,
Do you have any, I'm sorry, is this somebody else typing a question?
no.
Have you set up MarcEdit to do any tasks?
I haven't, and I really want to explore that. Have you?
Yes, I have. I use it. We have, you know, people at 51 different libraries adding materials and for things, certain things like audiobooks and DVDs. There's often some inconsistency, and so what I do is once a week or so, I download a list of what's been added, and then I just batch edit all of those with some simple tasks. So does anybody want to see a quick demo of that?
I would love to see that actually. I haven't even gotten to the step of successfully figuring out the best way to get the records out of Koha, like a batch of records out of Koha and into MarcEdit. So if you wouldn't mind showing us that, that would be terrific as well.
Sure.
Great.
Let me share my screen.
Looks good. We can see it.
Yeah, but I can't click on anything now. There we go. So this is a report that I run about once a week. Actually, I didn't want to run that one. That one will take forever. Now that I've already running it, but I run the report, and then it's going to give me essentially every video in the collection. And this will take a minute or two to run.
So a good first step then is figuring out a good report to get just what you're after for your task.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
This is a report that I built a long time ago. I've got one, you know, they're video games, audiobooks, and videos are the ones that I've been focusing on, trying to keep up to date, because those are the ones where we often have people, you know, with 51 people spread out over a huge area, it's hard to keep the training up to date. And even when you do train people, there are some people that I train over and over and over again to do the exact same things, and they still don't get it right.
Oh yeah, like I always tell my catalogers, we are human, so.
Yeah.
Just a few questions in the chat real fast. Todd asked if it's being recorded. Yeah, we'll have it up on the koha-US YouTube channel afterwards. And Myka wanted to know how you made that link in your notes, George.
I see that. Let me open this one and I'll click on edit. And I'm going to open this in a new window. So I know that this is report 3136. And so I just put a link. This is the all of the way that you find this is you if you run a report, and I'll actually, let me run this one. When you run a report, and now it's going to open all of these at once. So I'm running the report that I've got for video games. This is report 3136. And when you go to download it, this is a link. You can see down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's a URL down there. So all you have to do is recreate that URL and put it in the report as a hyperlink. And when you click on it, it will just run the report and do it. So you can do that with any report that doesn't accept parameters. You can have it output directly to a CSV file by putting that report number in there. And for our system, well, for any system, let me try and paste this into the, I think for any system that I just pasted should be the URL. So all you've got to do is put the report number after the equals and format it like a HTML link, and that should run the report for you. This is something that I'm sure won't be discussed at next week's basic SQL session because this is not basic.
No, we're trying to keep it really, really low level. So
that would be more an advanced SQL or advanced Koha reports. So, but this this report did run, and let me open it here. This is the one I want. So to make it easier for our patrons to find DVDs and Blu-rays and differentiate those in the catalog, we still use the 245H. And so once, I'm just going to grab a couple of these. Usually what I do is I will run this once a week, and I will highlight all of the things that I want to do in a batch. So I'm just going to do these few right now. And then I'm going to grab the bib numbers for those, for that set of DVDs. And I'm going to paste them into a text document and save it on my laptop here. And then what I'll do is I'll open up MarcEdit. I'll go to the editor, and then I'm going to do, I'm doing a Z3950 search in Next Search Catalog, and I'm going to do a batch search here. And I'm going to do record numbers. So when you click on batch search, this little file icon will show up here. And I'm going to click on that file icon and find the file that I just created that's got those bibliographic record numbers in it, which is this file right here. And then when I do this search, it's going to search Koha for those record numbers in a batch. So these are all of the DVDs that I just highlighted in that spreadsheet. And then I'm going to download all those items. And then I'm going to get this box out of the way. So then there are a whole bunch of tasks that I have set up. These were DVDs. So if I go to Tools, Assign Tasks, Currently Available Tasks, this task is to make sure that they're all converted correctly to DVD. And if I click on that, it's going to run 38 separate edits on all of those files that I just opened at once. It's going to put the 245H is going to say video recording DVD because that's what we use in our system. It's going to turn all of the relator codes into the full terms. I have it set up to do that. It also makes sure that the 942s all match our current standards for DVDs. And so it does all of those things at once, and then it runs the RDA helper on all of them. in case any of those records that were imported weren't RDA. And then once I've done all of that, I go to Koha and I click Update Create. And I always say no to this because it doesn't work. And then it's updating all 8 of those records that I just did. And if I go back, I'm not going to save the file. I'm going to close that. If I go back to Koha, and I accidentally open a second browser, there we go. If I download that file again, I can see that all of those 8 DVDs that I just ran through that process should have all changed based on what's in the report. So the actual, let me open up MarcEdit again. The trickiest part with this, let me go to Manage Tasks and Videos. This is the task. This is the task that's actually in there. So it's doing all of these things at once. It's swapping fields, it's editing fields, it's replacing things. I found that the easiest way to get the 942 to come out the way I want it to is to move a bunch of things into a field, what did I call it, 989, and put those in order, take all of the values that I want and put them in the 989 field, and then when it's done with that, I move them back to the field that they're supposed to be. So it's kind of just like a holding field. But it also gets all the punctuation correct. It just straightens up everything I want to do on the record. So you have to go through and set up the macro, and that's the hardest part, is creating them. But once I have one created, once I created the one for DVD, I was able to clone it and then go in and do just clone the one, and every place where it said DVD, I replaced that with Blu-ray. So after you create one macro, it's easy to go in and clone it, and then if you need to replicate it to do similar things but different things, then you just have to repeat that process. So
This is so cool, George.
it's something that I learned from Heather Braun, who I replaced here at Neckles. She was every month we import Hoopla records into our system. We import some Hoopla records in, and Hoopla provides us with MARC files, and I download those. And then we wanted to change wording in there and process them for our system. And so she had created all of these batch MarcEdit files for managing our Hoopla system. And once I learned how to do that, I did what I always do, and I just, twisted it to other purposes. Here's that report is finished running now. And it didn't open. There we go.
I could see using these tasks not just for quality control, but for example, I'm cataloging a bunch of menus that have been newly digitized, so I could take the print cataloging records for them and bring them into MarcEdit and create a task to convert those to the online versions, because there's a bunch of standard fields that would need to be added and changed.
Yeah, it's really, the first time that I did a big processing with this was we still have a couple of libraries that have VHS tapes, and they all just said video recording. And so people were requesting these things, expecting a DVD, and they were getting a VHS. And so we,
oh dear.
Yes, it was, it always made everybody real irritable.
Yeah.
But here are those eight ones that I just updated, and you can see now that they've all got video recording DVD. And that makes it easier for our patrons to see what they are. And the punctuation is correct. If it's got the C, it's got the slash after the H. If there's nothing, then there's the period, there's the colon. So I've got it set to do all of those, you know, quality control things like you said.
Yeah, that's
And
very
then
nice.
in the 300 field, which I've got over here in this report, it adds DVD, video disc. So it does all of those things. And, you know, the biggest batch I've ever done is like over 1,000 items at once. So being able to go in there and do that to make it easier for people to realize that these things were VHS tapes, doing that 1,000 individual edits in Koha would have been undoable pretty much. But being able to bulk edit them like this made it something totally possible. So
Yeah.
I guess there are some questions here. Can you share the MarcEdit tasks you set up? Probably. There is a way to export them. If you go into MarcEdit, I've never really thought about that before, but yeah, it would be under managed tasks. You can task action. There is a way to export. Oh, let's see, it's under here. Export selected tasks. So I've got that one selected, export. And then it allows you to, I can just put that on the desktop. I can put it in that folder. And then if I go to that folder, oh, that's a different folder. Mark. There's that, can be imported into another system, which I do a lot because I have this laptop that I work from home on, and then I have my desktop computer work that I do most of my work on. So let me stop share. There we go.
That's so cool, George.
So there's another question here. I created a macro in Koha Advanced Editor. When I logged back to Koha the next day, my macro disappeared. That's a question I can't answer, but maybe somebody else can.
Yeah, I think that's a known bug that people are working on because the Advanced Editor macros right now are dependent on being stored in the browser. So it depends on your browser settings and your cookie settings and that sort of thing to get that particular browser to retain them. And there, Jason just put a link in the chat. Thank you.
It looks like that one signed off, so hopefully we'll see that sooner than later.
Yes. There was a question also about using these things for rare books and special collections. I could totally see using that for those sorts of collections. For example, we have a lot of media masters in our rare book vault, and they have a standard note about the restrictions on their use. It would be great to standardize those. Also, a lot of rare books and special collections have standard notes and fields for there's more cataloging put into them, more descriptions, that sort of things, more item specific notes. And I could see a lot of quality control processes being run to look for those and see how those are handled.
One thing I have done too, like I said, from MarcEdit, modifying the item information, I haven't gotten it to work since the bib record moved from biblio items to biblio metadata. But you're still able to modify 952 fields, because what you can do is get the data out of Koha, put it into MarcEdit, and then instead of uploading it directly with the Z3950 editor, you can save the whole thing as a Marc file, and then use the batch, the stage item records, the tools to bring in records the other way, to import those and then overwrite any item data with the new data. I have done that too with one of our libraries in Baldwin City, had about 5,000 items in a Kansas room. And over time, some of them had the call number field started with Kansas, then some of them started with KAS, and some of them had the Kansas after the call number, and some of them had the word reference before Kansas. And I was able to just use MarcEdit to batch edit them all so that they were all the same standard, the same formatted the same way, and then did all that in MarcEdit and saved it as a Marc file, and then staged it through the Koha tools. So MarcEdit doesn't have to be integrated through Z3950 to still be helpful.
That's very cool. Have you also played with the batch item modification in Koha?
Yeah, we use that all the time. It's not the kind of thing though that can reorganize call numbers though.
Right. Yeah.
But MarcEdit can.
Yeah.
So.
I think we have another question from Myka in the chat about the task manager. Is it smart enough to check for a particular 590 note and only add it if it isn't present?
Yeah. Let me. When you let's see. Add delete field. If you have a field data like 590 and you want to put a new 590 in there, the note that says whatever you want, you can tell it to add the field only if not present, and then run that. And building a task, manage task. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how to create a new task. There we go, new task. When you create a task, let's call this one test.
George, I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, of course not, because I didn't press share screen. Let me start over.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I open up MarcEdit and I go to the Marc editor, so essentially when you're doing tasks in MarcEdit, you're using these same functions that are here. And so if we have something like build new field, or not build new field, edit field, add delete field, here we go. So if you wanted a 590, and we've got string A, and we say add field only if not present, and then you run that on whatever data is in the Marc editor. Creating the task is just about the same. To create a task, you go to manage tasks, you find new task and select, and I'm just going to call this one test. And for tasks, I'm going to add a new task, and I'm going to do add new field task. And so the interface looks just the same as what we just did. So we could say here 590, and then add field only if not present. And then we click on add field, that adds the data to the task. And so then once you save that, if we were to bring in a record now and run that task on it, it would add the 590 note to anything that didn't already have a 590 in it. So anything you can do in MarcEdit, you can add to the task manager.
That's so cool. Thank you for walking us through that, George.
I was coming hoping to learn something new that I didn't already know, and here I am.
Here you are helping all us newbies.
Sorry about that.
No, this is wonderful. Well, once we all get up to speed with you, and then we can all share. So I'm wondering if there's a good way for us to share the tasks. I know in our koha-US cataloging SIG group we can share files, but I like to see things in a more open, easily accessible way, maybe on the Koha. I don't know if there's a way on the Koha wiki that we can share tasks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. How do they link out to like external files? Because I guess we could host the tasks in the koha-US drive and then put links to those tasks on the wiki maybe.
Yeah, let's experiment. Let's try something out.
I think, you know, the reason it's so easy to share SQL data and other data like that is because it's just text data, but this is actual, you know, data in the file.
Well then, could something like GitHub work for us?
Actually, GitHub can work for just about anything I can think of. GitHub is, you know, you can create a GitHub and put anything in it, really.
Yeah, I would say as long as we can find a place to host it, then we can link it up on a page on the wiki. Maybe build a new page for tasks or something. Because it does look like there are things on the wiki, like that page you linked earlier has links out to other places. Like there's a link out to the drive and other things out to your catalog in one instance. So I think it
Yeah,
might be doable.
yeah, let me share my screen and pull the wiki up. I know we're almost out of time, but do this very quickly.
All the different crazy accounts and things I created when I was koha-US president, it never occurred to me to create a GitHub account.
Yeah, perhaps on this, on the wiki, on the training resources for cataloging, we could create a page linking to shared MarcEdit tasks from our koha-US SIG, and then create a koha-US GitHub to put our tasks. We can definitely have some fun with that. Well, I think it's just about the end of the hour. If anybody has any last questions, things to chime in. I really appreciate you chiming in, George, with your with your impromptu sharing of your MarcEdit processes. It's super helpful.
You're welcome.
Well, our next topic in May that we had thought to look at is going to be authorities. So prepare your questions. Let us know. Take a look at that. And I want to thank everybody for coming this morning, and big thank you to George. And we can certainly revisit MarcEdit. There's so much to it. So I imagine we'll be doing that again, and then perhaps we could actually teach George something.
See y'all later.
Thanks, everyone.